The amateur speculator comes to Wall Street with his mind fixed upon a single glittering and ultimately ruinous objective: the pursuit of profit. He is a hunter of gains, a seeker of fortune. The professional, the man who has survived the unforgiving crucible of the market, approaches the game from the polar opposite direction. His first, last, and most obsessive thought is not on how much money he can make, but on how much he can avoid losing. This is the great fundamental dividing line between the man who is destined to fail and the man who is built to endure. The amateur is an optimist, a dreamer. The professional is a realist, a strategist whose primary directive is the preservation of his capital. For he knows that a speculator without capital is like a general without an army. He is out of the game. All the brilliant analysis, all the perfectly timed entries, and all the courageous holding of winning positions are rendered utterly meaningless if a single catastrophic loss is allowed to wipe a man's account clean. Therefore, the most important of all speculative principles, the one upon which a long and successful career is built, is the science of cutting losses. This is not a defensive or timid posture. It is a calculated and offensive strategy. It is the art of the tactical retreat, the discipline of sacrificing a single, losing battle in order to have the strength to win the war. It is the speculator's insurance policy against the one thing he can be certain of: his own fallibility. The man who would master the market must first master the art of the stop-loss. He must have a definite and inviolable formula for limiting his risk. Jesse Livermore, through a lifetime of both staggering success and complete financial ruin, forged such a formula. It was a rule of iron, a principle he learned was as vital to a speculator as air is to a living man. This entire philosophy, the hard-won wisdom that separates the professional survivor from the hopeful amateur, is a central theme in the timeless chronicle of his operational life. The lessons are as stark and as necessary today as they were a century ago. A link to Edwin Lefebvre's essential work, Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, can be found in the description below this video for any student who wishes to study the mind of a master. Also in the description is a link for those who find this work of value and wish to support the continued creation of these deep dives through a donation or tip. Your support is what makes this in-depth analysis possible. To understand the necessity of Livermore's formula, one must first dissect the psychology of the trader who refuses to take a loss. This man is not governed by reason, but by two of the most powerful and destructive emotions that can enter the human mind: ego and hope. He enters a trade and the market moves against him. The ticker tape in its cold and impersonal language is delivering a clear verdict. His judgment was wrong. But his ego, his pride, cannot accept this. To sell for a loss is to admit in a final and irrefutable way that he has made a mistake. His pride rebels against this admission. He begins to tell himself a story. He says the market is being irrational. My analysis was correct. It is only a temporary reaction. He is no longer a speculator reading the facts of the tape. He is an egotist arguing with reality. As the loss grows, the second poison, hope, begins its deadly work. Hope is the great opiate of the losing trader. It whispers in his ear, "Just hold on a little longer. It is bound to come back. You will get out even." He clings to this hope as his small loss deepens into a catastrophic one. He has now become what Livermore called an involuntary investor. He's no longer in the trade by choice based on a sound speculative premise. He is a prisoner of his own mistake, locked into a losing position by the chains of his own hope. This is a state of profound psychological torment. The trader cannot think clearly. He is obsessed with his losing position. His judgment is clouded and he misses the new, genuine opportunities that the market is presenting, because his capital and his mental energy are entirely consumed by his past error. The man who has fallen into this trap has forgotten the most basic rule of the game. A speculator is not paid for being right. He is paid for being right, and then acting on it. and a crucial part of acting on it is to admit, quickly and decisively, when one is wrong. This is why a definite, predetermined, and automatic rule for cutting losses is not a mere suggestion, it is an absolute necessity. It is the mechanism that protects a speculator from his own worst enemy, himself. The formula that Livermore himself developed and articulated in his own book on trading was a model of simplicity and ruthless efficiency. It was a rule based not on emotion or opinion, but on cold, hard mathematics. The rule was this: a loss on any single speculative commitment must never be allowed to exceed 10% of the capital invested in that trade. This was the line in the sand. It was the absolute, final, and non-negotiable limit of risk. This was not a vague guideline to be considered. It was an iron law, to be followed with the same blind and automatic obedience with which a soldier follows the orders of his commanding officer. There were no exceptions. The 10% figure was, for him, the calculated price of information. When he entered a trade at a pivotal point, he was paying a small price. The commission, to ask the market a question. The 10% stop loss was the maximum price he was willing to pay for the market's answer. If the stock moved against him by 10%, the market's answer was a clear and unambiguous no. His judgment was proven wrong. The case was closed. The trial was over. To remain in the position after that verdict was not speculation. It was insanity. Why this specific number, 10%? The logic is one of pure, practical, long-term survival. The speculator who adheres to this rule is a man who can never be wiped out by a single bad trade. He has made it mathematically impossible to be removed from the game. He can be wrong multiple times in a row. He can take a series of 5, 6, or even 7 consecutive 10% losses, and while his capital will be diminished, he will still be in the game, his reserves intact, ready for the moment when his judgment is finally proven correct. Contrast this with the amateur who has no such rule. A single position held onto with hope can easily decline by 50%. A 50% loss in capital requires a 100% gain on the remaining capital just to get back to even. This is a Herculean and often impossible task. The 10% rule is the mathematical foundation of capital preservation. It is a recognition that the game of speculation is a game of probabilities and averages. The goal is not to be right every time, but to ensure that the profits from the times one is right are vastly larger than the small controlled losses from the times one is wrong. This rule is a direct and logical extension of Livermore's most fundamental belief: the absolute supremacy of the ticker tape. The tape tells the truth. A loss is not a random or malicious event. It is a direct and clear communication from the market. It is the tape rendering its verdict that the line of least resistance is not, as the speculator had judged, in the direction of his trade. It is a statement of fact. To hold a position after it has hit its 10% stop loss is to engage in a direct, futile, and costly argument with the tape. It is the act of a man who is substituting his own emotional, hopeful opinion for the market's expressed and verifiable fact. The stop loss is the pre-committed decision to never engage in such an argument. It is the speculator's vow of obedience to the market's supreme authority. It is the mechanism that forces him to accept the truth, even when the truth is painful to his ego. It is therefore the ultimate tool of emotional discipline. It removes the need for a new, agonizing decision to be made in the heat of a losing trade. The decision has already been made in the cold light of reason before the trade was ever entered. The execution of the stop loss is an automatic, not a discretionary act. This brings us to the most perverse and destructive violation of the stop loss principle: the act of averaging down. The amateur, having seen his stock decline by 10%, not only fails to sell, he actively buys more. He believes he is a shrewd investor getting a better average price. In reality, he is a fool, doubling down on an error in judgment. He is reinforcing failure. Livermore knew this to be the most dangerous of all speculative sins. It is a complete inversion of all sound principles. The speculator's job is to reinforce success, to pyramid his winning positions. The amateur who averages a loss is pyramiding his failures. The 10% stop-loss formula is in its very essence an anti-averaging down rule. It is a definitive statement that a stock which has proven itself to be wrong will not be given another dollar of good money to lose. The relationship between Livermore's entry method and his stop-loss formula is an intimate and logical one. He made his entries only at pivotal points, moments when a stock, by its own action, was signaling its intention to begin a major move. He was buying at the moment of least resistance. Therefore, if a stock that was bought at a decisive pivotal point then proceeded to decline by a full 10%, it was a sign of a profound and dangerous anomaly. It was a clear indication that the pivotal point was a false one, that the breakout was a trap. The stop-loss was the final definitive test of the pivotal point's validity. If the stop was hit, the entire technical and logical premise of the trade was instantly invalidated. To remain in the position after that would be to remain in a trade for which there was no longer any logical reason. The formula was not just a tool for financial preservation but for mental preservation as well. A speculator who is holding a large and growing losing position is a man whose mind is in a state of torment. He cannot think clearly. He cannot sleep at night. He is consumed by the worry and the hope associated with his one bad trade. His judgment becomes compromised. He is unable to see the new, genuine opportunities that the market is presenting because his entire consciousness is clouded by his past mistake. Livermore taught the importance of selling down to the sleeping point. By taking the loss, by cutting the diseased position from his portfolio, the speculator clears his mind. He is back in cash, objective, and free from the emotional turmoil of the bad trade. The small definite loss on his account statement is the price he pays for this mental clarity. It is a price the professional is always willing to pay, for he knows that a clear and objective mind is his single most valuable asset. Was this 10% rule always absolute and rigid? The study of his life, as chronicled in Reminiscences, suggests that his true stop-loss was often based on the stock's behavior, not just a fixed number. If a stock, after he bought it, began to act wrong immediately, if it showed signs of weakness and a lack of follow-through, he would often sell it long before it had the chance to decline by a full 10%. He was a master tape reader, and he would sell at the first sign of danger. The 10% rule, therefore, should be seen as the maximum, the final line of defense, the point of no return. It was the mathematical backstop for his qualitative judgment. The true formula was a combination of the two. A constant, intelligent reading of the tape's action, backed by a rigid mathematical limit on any possible loss. It is in this moment of accepting a loss that a trader's discipline is most severely tested. The pain of being wrong can be immense. It is for this reason that a constant study of these principles is a necessity. A return to this channel, to this video and others like it, especially after a series of unsuccessful trades, serves as a vital recalibration of the professional mindset. In the final analysis, the speculator must understand that the stop-loss is not merely a strategy for limiting losses. It is the fundamental strategy for ensuring a long and prosperous career in the market. It is the one single principle that separates the professional survivor from the brilliant but doomed amateur who is eventually wiped out. All the genius in the world is useless if a single uncontrolled loss can remove a man from the game permanently. The acceptance and the disciplined automatic application of a stop-loss formula, like the 10% rule, is not a sign of fear or of timidness. It is the ultimate mark of the professional. It is the sign of a man who has conquered his own ego, who has banished hope from his operational toolkit, and who has a profound and abiding respect for the power of the market and the fallibility of his own judgment. It is, in short, the price of staying in the game.